Members of the congregation, I don't think we have any visitors. Excuse me, Miss Mickey. We just include you as part of the group. We have our Finance Committee meeting, which is a committee of the whole. We have several members that through prior commitments, they are unable to attend. Mr. Newman had to, at the last minute, go out of town, so he asked me to chair the meeting on his behalf. We have two items to be addressed, and both of them fall under the Mrs. Bamberg. So if you'd like, go ahead and begin. Number one is our adoption of the 2022-23 budget.
Thank you, Mr. Bullard, President Bass, Superintendent Downey. Thank you all tonight for all of your time and attention. I know that sometimes the finances is not the funnest to go through, so hopefully we can keep it interesting and pertinent to all of us. So this is the proposed budget for the 2022-2023 school year, and the general fund and then various funds. And so you should have a printed copy as well as the copy that I emailed out yesterday. I was going to go through some of the high points just to point out for your information. As always, if you have questions, please make sure to stop and ask, and we'll make sure to go over that. The first one to go over is the ad valorem tax. We are pleased to announce that the assessed value this year went up about $5 million, and so we are going to see a growth there in the ad valorem tax, and so that is reflected in the budget. What I've currently budgeted on the ad valorem tax is this year we're budgeting at 96.5% of the total assessed value. That's kind of in range of what we collect each year, and so that's where those numbers came from this year. The next one would be the sales tax, and the sales tax has actually grown significantly in the last few years. We've seen a significant growth in sales tax. However, we are expecting that to slow down, and we're not sure what that new normal is going to be on the sales tax side. And there was like an exponential growth for 21-22. And so I have actually based this year's sales tax based on prior year, the 2020-2021, with a 2% growth on top of that. And so kind of taking out that oddball year that had that significant growth. I do feel that that's a conservative number on the sales tax, but that's kind of how I've budgeted that for this year to make sure that we've covered that. You will see a little bit of growth in the interest income. We're still waiting to see what that looks like with the current financial situation. You'll see a growth in our MFP this year. Part of that's going to be related to the state-approved pay raise, and part of that's going to be student growth, and those are both incorporated in the MFP number. One other change that you'll see is some of the state grant lines in the general fund. We're zeroing those out in the general fund. We have actually moved those to their own fund, and that's on page 33. So if there's any of those state grants that you kind of see throughout, some of those are 8G, LA4, and some of those we are moving those to their own fund just for better tracking purposes. And so page 33 is that new fund that you'll see that we're proposing set up this year. The revenue side, that's the high points for the general fund. Are there any questions on that before I move on? Yes, sir.
We talked briefly about this. Is there any concern with the other entities about the impact of inflation on the growth in some of those areas?
There are. The expenses is where we really have seen that. I actually was surprised. June sales tax was our largest sales tax. I was expecting it to start trending down on the revenue side. I'm assuming that's still coming in from the inflation on the prices that are being charged. I'm not sure. We haven't quite seen that slow down yet in the collections that I am actually expecting in the current environment. So But we're seeing some there, but on the expense side, we're going to go over a couple of those areas that we've had to increase.
Or have you or has anyone considered breaking down the sales tax revenue to certain payers or payer groups, so that if we could better identify on a month-to-month basis if we start trending down?
Where that trend is?
I can think of a couple of areas that have been significant contributors and most probably will continue to be such for the foreseeable future, but the inflation factor, that would cover, of course, all the retail and what have you, but has there ever been an effort, or do you know if our sales tax collector, if they do any monitoring of groups or specific payers?
They do. They can run the reports by payer. They also do, from what I've seen, they group them by type, the retailers, the restaurants, those kind of things. I'm sure I could get those reports. I haven't requested them, but that's a great idea to start analyzing the different payee types and what they look like and how they make up the percentage of the market. So we do have an agreement in place with the sales tax collector that we can get that detail to start looking at.
I just mentioned it's one possible.
Yes, sir. I think it's a great idea. I'll definitely look into that.
Because there have been such significant upswings.
Yes, sir.
In the amounts that, we don't mind it when they're running up, but boy, when they break over and start down.
Absolutely.
That could bite us. Any other questions or comments?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Wiggins. Yes.
Ms. Bamberg, interest on investments. Do we invest in our rainy day fund?
Do we do what, Mr. Lee?
Invest in our rainy day fund?
We do not. Currently, we're not investing the reserves in the general fund. We have looked at that. We've started discussing that, but we have not moved forward with that arrangement. And so currently, we hold it in our bank account, and they do provide a nice interest rate there. And so we've been able to utilize that, but we have started reviewing the investment policy and what potential is out there for investing those.
Okay. Just a question, not a criticism, because it's a nice, healthy fund.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
yes, sir. We have started looking at it. We just have not moved that direction yet.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other comments or questions? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Bass.
Ms. Bamberg, can you tell me where this budget will be readily available for anyone to pull up anywhere where they can look at it as far as public record, where it's being advertised and those things for those that sometimes say they have difficulty finding our financials?
Yes, sir. A copy of our audit report, which would be the last year report, is on our school board website. All of our audit reports are on the legislative auditor website. As far as the current budget, all of our budgets that we present to the board are attached to our board minutes and the board docs, and so they're able to pull any of those budgets down that we've adopted. And so we do make all of that publicly available, as well as we advertise the budget, and it has been available for anyone that wanted to come by and request a copy.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right.
I guess we'll move, we've been on the positive side, now we'll move to the other side.
Expenses. All right. This year, we've had a few significant changes on it. Obviously, if you look across the board in salaries and benefits, you'll see an increase there. This is going to be for a combination of reasons, one being the pay raise that we've given for this year, the combination of the state-approved raise and what the board added to that, which was $2,250 for the certified and $1,500 for the classified employees. We've also budgeted an additional amount there for potential supplement in the future. Small amount, I honestly didn't want to get too much into the details on what we budgeted because we're not sure what revenues are due and what it will look like. Once we see if we can pay that out, as well as step increases, the annual step increases that the employees that are eligible receive each year. And so that'll be a lot of the increases and expenses that you see in salaries and benefits. You'll also see that we have budgeted an increase for substitutes. That's going to have to do with a combination of two things. One, the ability to find more subs. So we're expecting to get closer back to the old staffing, I guess, I don't know how else to phrase that, for subs, the ability to get subs, the number of subs that we hire. And so we are already seeing an increase in subs across the board, I think, as well as the raise that we've given there, that pay increase for day-to-day subs that we've given. And so that's going to account for that budgeted increase for substitutes. The other key line items that I did want to point out are going to start on page 9. This is our operation and maintenance section. And so line 345 is our repair and upkeep of buildings. You'll see we budgeted an increase there for repair and upkeep of buildings. This has to do with a combination of things of increase in cost for contractors that we hire, as well as the increase in different projects and things that we have flowing in that direction. We're trying to get that budget back to where it was in the past and the current needs of that area. You'll also, the last two lines on that page, 351, 352, you'll see pretty good increases for natural gas and electricity. I don't think any of us are surprised that utility bills are increasing, and we've seen a very significant increase in utilities, district-wide as well. And so those two areas, we've budgeted an increase there just based on current bills that we're receiving and expectation moving forward on those bills. On page 10 is where student transportation starts. We've got a few areas here. The main one that I want to point out is 373, our fuel. I don't think any of us are surprised that fuel is increasing as well. And so we've had to significantly increase that line item to account for the current needs of the transportation department. And so if we see we don't need that full amount, we are going to back it back down, but that's our current estimate of where we expect to be this year. Hopefully we won't have to adjust it any further. And then page 13, this is going to be our bottom line for the general fund. You'll see the set aside that we did last year for future construction needs based on growth. We still have that amount set aside. And our ending projected unreserved fund balance is at $44,290,033. This is currently at 16.98%, which is just over our 16.67, which is our projection of where we need to be and want to be, which is equivalent to 2-month reserves. So that's what I had for the general fund. Any questions on the expenses before we move forward? Okay. All right. Just a couple more funds that I wanted to point out. And this is really just for your information. Nothing big has changed. Page 20. This is going to be our beef fund. Based on current investments, we're projecting about $1 million in interest this year. I do expect we'll be able to get that and hopefully more to be able to use there. But we've also budgeted $1 million in expenses, and you'll see the breakout that there. And this is going to be primarily educational software and technology allotments for the schools. Those are the two biggest line items that we pay out of this fund. And so that's what we have on the beef fund. Page 22 is going to be the health insurance fund, and then page 23 is going to be the child nutrition fund. Those are the two other funds that we like to make sure that we point out. The Child Nutrition Fund, you will see some adjustments there. One of the main things that you'll see is projected revenue. The federal revenue is projected to go down compared to the prior year. This primarily has to do with the current change on child nutrition, that it's not all students eating free anymore, as well as the reimbursement rates have changed. Kind of going back closer to pre-COVID is kind of where this is going to. But you'll also see an increase in projected sales. And so that's kind of, both of those are that adjustment on kind of going back to the current structure where it was before COVID, where we have specific number of CEP schools, but we also have those that have to pay. And so, but the fund itself, we're projecting close to a break even this year, but they will be ending with a fund balance of, projected fund balance of $3 million. So we're currently looking at any large equipment needs and things that we would need out of this fund. Yes, sir.
One question, if you go back to page 22 in our group health plan, we're in a deficit from what I'm reading there.
No, sir, not a deficit. It is actually, it's close, but it's not projected to go to a deficit this year. That proposed 22-23 budget is where we're looking at, and so we're projecting it starting with $468,000 and ending at $526 is the current projection for the health insurance fund. We are still settling out on the rebates for Egg Whip. They are coming in at better than expected. Thankfully, we were able to get so much reimbursed on COVID expenses. We were able to utilize ESSER funds to reimburse COVID expenses, and I think we were able to get about $6 million of that back so far. And so that has helped as well. We've had significant expenses there. We are still waiting to see what all reinsurance rebates we're getting, and so this is the conservative estimate of where I expect. We are going to have to review the health insurance fund moving forward, but this currently I do expect it to break even for 22-23.
Bass.
Ms. Bamberg, going back to child nutrition, I know that when we had the consultant come in, they looked at child nutrition and they went over some metrics that they measure, meals per worked hour and other things. We had talked about attrition and some places that may be understaffed, some places that may be overstaffed. Can you tell me a little bit more about that and where we're at in that process?
Yes, sir, absolutely. They did review the schools, I think, and I forget the exact number. They had a set of schools, 6 or 8, that they wanted us to review, where they felt the staffing needed to be adjusted. Ms. Horton and her team have worked very hard on that to address those schools. Through attrition, they've been able to already address several of them. They've got some schools that they kind of have the hire forms on hold. They're not necessarily saying do away with the position. We're trying to see what meal counts continue to look like. One of the things that Lean Frog did is they provided us copies of all the spreadsheets to monitor all the schools, and they've trained Ms. Horton on how to run those spreadsheets and how to collect the information from the system. And so they're running those on a regular basis this year. She's training her field managers on how to run those and properly monitor the schools so that we can identify those meal per labor hour variances and where we need to address it. And so she's already addressed the staffing. Like I said, we've kind of got those on hold. We are also closely monitoring the menus to see which menu items are most favorable, the least favorable. We're trying to get more input from the students and from the schools as a whole. And so Ms. Horton has been closely reviewing and monitoring that report to make sure that we're getting the best service to the students that we can.
Well, I think her team's done really well. I know we were trending in a positive direction before COVID. It's difficult to serve more meals for less money when they're free and everybody eats for free. But I'm glad to hear that trend is continuing as we get back into normalcy. So thank you, Ms. Horton.
Absolutely. And as y'all know, pre-COVID, and we were looking at not just the MFP that we were having to give the child nutrition program, we were also having to supplement with additional transfers in from general fund. We've actually been able, through Ms. Horton's work, been able to reduce the MFP down about $300,000 almost $400,000. We've also not had to give them any transfers. And as you can see, they're starting to grow a little bit of a fund balance. So we're starting to be able to address some of the long-term needs of the department. So they're doing great work to make sure they address the financial concerns.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Go ahead.
Okay. Those were all the key items I had on the budget, unless y'all have any other concerns or questions. So tonight, what I am asking is for an approval of the budget.
Would you like to make that request at this time, and then it can come out of committee with a positive?
Yes, sir. So tonight, I request approval of the 22-23 budget as a whole for all funds presented.
You've heard the request. Do I hear a motion? Motion by Mr. Slack. I'm sorry, Mr. Slack, I just went completely brain dead. Second by Ms. Darby. And I think Ms. Darby may have had her hand up first, but
No, that's fine.
we'll.
I'm sorry. No, sir, that's fine.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? If not, please vote by raising your hand.
Yeah.
It is unanimous. Thank you, Ms. Bamberg.
Thank you.
And would you like to now address the adoption of a resolution setting millages levied for the 2022 tax roll on all property subject to taxation by the Bossier Parish School Board?
Yes, sir. Thank you. You should have a copy of the resolution in front of you. These are the proposed millages that I'm requesting we provide to the assessor and have assessed this year for the 2022 tax roll. These are the same millages as the prior year, and so there's no change from prior year on the millage.
I'm sorry, I don't have a copy of that resolution.
I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. Is it on the attachment?
It's attached in board docs.
Okay, I'm so sorry about that, y'all. I was out today, so I didn't get to make that copy. And I didn't tell Miss Carrier. That's my fault.
So just,
There we go. Could you scroll it, please, Mr. Thompson? Has everyone had an opportunity? Mr. Bamberg?
we're not changing the millages at all?
We are not.
Okay.
We are not. The assessed value did change, but the millage will not change.
Okay.
Mr. Self, do we need to read this resolution into the minutes?
Did you say it was not attached?
It's in
Oh,
board
no,
docs.
if it's attached,
Yes.
yeah,
Thank you, sir.
make him a copy.
okay, here.
If everyone has had an opportunity to review the resolution and the millage amounts, are there any questions or comments? This is an action item, and Chair will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Smith, second. Second by Mr. Dean. All in favor, raise your hand. It's unanimous. And Ms.
That's it.
Bamberg, I believe that's about all we can get from you today.
That's it. Thank y'all so much. I do appreciate it.
Any questions, comments, anything from the committee? If not, this meeting of the Bossier Parish School Board Finance Committee is adjourned.